They told you that being nice was the key to everything. That if you were just kind enough, patient enough, understanding enough, life would reward you. They said, treat people well, and they'll treat you the same. But reality has shown you otherwise. You've been overlooked, underestimated, ignored. You've watched as others, who put in half the effort, get double the rewards. You've given everything, only to receive nothing. And now, you're starting to realize the truth. Being a nice guy isn't the golden ticket you were promised. It's a trap. Because here's what they never told you. Nice guys don't finish last because they're good people. They finish last because they misunderstand the game. They think being agreeable, selfless, and endlessly accommodating will make people love them. But in reality, it only makes them forgettable. The world doesn't reward those who bend over backwards. It rewards those who stand their ground. The illusion of the nice guy. Most nice guys operate under a dangerous belief that people will value them for their kindness alone. But kindness without strength is weakness in disguise. When you let others walk all over you, when you say yes to everything, when you hide your true desires to avoid conflict, you're not being nice. You're being invisible. Think about it. When was the last time the world truly respected someone who never asserted themselves, who never set boundaries, who never took risks? The truth is, people admire those who stand firm, who have conviction, who demand respect without begging for it. Women don't reject nice guys because they're kind. They reject them because they're predictable, because they don't challenge them, because they don't evoke excitement, intensity, or passion. And in the brutal reality of life, predictability is boring. The fix, becoming a good man, not just a nice one. So how do you escape the trap? How do you shift from being overlooked to being respected? You start by becoming a man of value, a man with strength, depth, and purpose. 1. Stop seeking approval. Start commanding respect. If there's one thing that keeps nice guys stuck, it's their endless need for approval. They walk through life as if they're waiting for someone to give them permission to speak, to act, to take up space. They hold back their opinions, soften their words, and adjust their behavior just to avoid stepping on toes. And worst of all, they believe that by being accommodating and agreeable, they'll earn the respect and admiration of others. But here's the harsh truth. People don't respect those who constantly seek approval. They respect those who don't need it. Think about the men who command attention when they walk into a room. They're not trying to impress anyone. They're not anxiously scanning for reactions, wondering if people like them. They just are. They own their space, their words, their presence. And because of that, people gravitate toward them. The approval-seeking trap. Most nice guys fall into a dangerous cycle. They believe that being liked equals being respected. They try to please everyone, avoiding conflict at all costs. They suppress their real thoughts and desires to fit in. They become passive, waiting for others to validate them. They are ignored, overlooked, and ultimately disrespected. Seeking approval makes you weak because it shows that your self-worth depends on external validation. And if your value comes from others, then you're not in control of your life, they are. Imagine a man who constantly seeks approval from a woman he's attracted to. He showers her with compliments, agrees with everything she says, and bends over backward to make her happy. Does she admire him? No. She sees him as predictable, desperate, and ultimately unworthy of her respect. Now, imagine a man who knows his own worth, who doesn't change himself to fit someone else's expectations. He has opinions, he has standards, and he isn't afraid to walk away from people who don't treat him right. That's the man who commands respect. 2. Set boundaries and enforce them. Boundaries are the invisible lines that define what you will and will not tolerate in life. They protect your energy, your self-respect, and your dignity. And yet, most nice guys either don't have boundaries at all or worse, they set them but never enforce them. A man without boundaries is like a city without walls, open to invasion, constantly under siege, and at the mercy of whatever force decides to take advantage of him. If you don't establish and defend your personal limits, people will walk all over you, not because they're necessarily bad people, but because you've given them permission to do so. Why nice guys struggle with boundaries? Nice guys are terrified of confrontation. They avoid conflict like the plague, believing that if they keep the peace, they'll be liked and accepted. They'd rather suffer in silence than risk upsetting someone. Here's what that looks like in real life. Your boss keeps piling extra work on you, and instead of saying, "This is my responsibility," you just do it, hoping for recognition. A friend always cancels on you last minute, but instead of calling it out, you just accept it. A woman treats you with disrespect, but instead of walking away, you stick around, afraid to lose her. Every time you allow someone to cross your boundaries without consequences, you send a silent message. I don't respect myself, so you don't have to either. And people will treat you accordingly. The hard truth is this: if you don't set boundaries, the world will set them for you, and you won't like where they put you. What strong boundaries look like? A man with strong boundaries is not aggressive, rude, or controlling. He is simply unshakable in his self-respect. He knows what he will tolerate and what he won't, and he has zero hesitation about walking away from anything that doesn't meet his standards. Here's how that translates into action. If someone speaks to you disrespectfully, you don't argue or beg for respect. You state clearly that you won't tolerate it. And if it continues, you remove yourself. If a woman plays games with you, ghosts you, or tests your limits in a toxic way, you don't try to convince her to treat you better. You just move on. If a boss, friend, or family member repeatedly takes advantage of you, you don't complain. You establish your limit and stand by it. Boundaries don't work unless you enforce them. If you tell someone, "I won't tolerate disrespect," but then let them get away with it, your words mean nothing. How to set and enforce boundaries like a man. 1. Identify your non-negotiables. Before you can enforce boundaries, you need to know what they are. Take time to reflect on what behaviors, situations, or dynamics you absolutely will not accept. Ask yourself, what are my deal breakers in relationships and friendships? What behaviors instantly lower my respect for someone? Where in my life have I allowed people to overstep my limits? Knowing your boundaries in advance prevents you from making emotional decisions in the heat of the moment. 2. Communicate your boundaries clearly. A boundary is only effective if it's expressed. If you don't communicate your limits, people won't know they exist. This doesn't mean you need to go around making dramatic declarations. It simply means being direct when the moment arises. With a friend, "I don't appreciate being talked to like that. If it happens again, I'm out." With a partner, "If you disappear without communication, I'm not sticking around." With work, "I don't answer emails outside of work hours. My time is valuable." Say it once, say it with confidence, and mean it. 3. Enforce your boundaries without guilt. Here's where most nice guys fail. They set boundaries, but then they backpedal. They say, "I won't tolerate this." But the moment someone pushes back, they cave. And once that happens, their boundary is meaningless. The key to enforcing boundaries is zero tolerance for excuses, guilt, or emotional manipulation. If someone crosses a line you've set, you follow through with consequences. No warnings, no second chances. If someone speaks to you disrespectfully after you've warned them, you walk away. If a woman tests your limits by flaking on plans multiple times, you stop chasing. If a boss disrespects your time, you push back or leave if necessary. There's no negotiating your self-respect. Once a line is crossed, it stays crossed. 4. Accept that some people won't like it, and that's a good thing. When you start enforcing boundaries, some people will push back. They'll get offended. They'll accuse you of being selfish, difficult, or arrogant. This is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that they benefited from your lack of boundaries before. People who truly respect you will adjust when you set boundaries. The ones who don't, they were never worth your time to begin with. 5. Train the world to respect you. The way you allow people to treat you is a reflection of how you treat yourself. If you respect yourself, others will follow. If you don't, they won't either. Start enforcing your boundaries today. Not tomorrow, not someday, right now. And the more you do it, the more you'll realize something powerful. You're no longer chasing respect, you're commanding it. 3. Embrace challenge, uncertainty, and risk. Most nice guys crave security. They want certainty, predictability, and a life free of struggle. They avoid risks because risks mean failure. They avoid challenges because challenges mean discomfort. And they avoid uncertainty because it forces them to step outside the carefully controlled world they've built around themselves. But here's the brutal reality. Everything you want, respect, success, fulfillment, attraction, exists on the other side of challenge, uncertainty, and risk. If you always choose comfort, you will always remain weak. If you always play it safe, you will never grow. The men who command respect, who exude confidence, who draw others toward them like gravity, are the men who have willingly thrown themselves into the fire and emerged stronger. A man who avoids challenge is a man who has already lost. He might not see it yet, but he's living in a cage of his own making, small, fragile, and easily overlooked. And nothing kills attraction, admiration, and respect faster than a man who is afraid to step into the unknown. The truth is, life will test you. You will be thrown into chaos, into moments of pure uncertainty where there are no guarantees, no safety nets. The question is, will you face it head on, or will you shrink? A weak man hesitates when opportunity knocks. He questions himself when faced with adversity. He freezes when life demands action. A strong man, he moves forward anyway, even when he's uncertain, even when he's afraid, because he understands that greatness is not given. It is forged in discomfort. You must become the kind of man who sees challenge as an invitation. When something looks difficult, lean into it. When an opportunity presents itself, take it, even if you don't feel ready. Especially if you don't feel ready. Confidence is not something you are born with. It is something you build by repeatedly proving to yourself that you can handle whatever life throws at you. Imagine two men. The first avoids discomfort. He never takes risks. He stays in his safe little world, never pushing himself beyond what he already knows. He never speaks up, never puts himself in situations where he might fail. He waits for the perfect moment to act, except that moment never comes. The second man, he welcomes uncertainty. He sees difficulty as the price of admission for a life worth living. He steps into challenges without waiting for permission. He understands that failure is just another step forward, and so he moves with confidence, not because he has all the answers, but because he trusts himself to figure it out. Which of these two men do you think commands respect? Which of these two men do you think women gravitate toward? Which of these two men do you think will dominate his life instead of being a passive bystander? You must become the second man. Stop waiting for guarantees. Stop waiting for the fear to go away. Stop clinging to the illusion of safety. Lean into the challenge. Walk into the unknown. Bet on yourself, because the man who refuses to be broken by uncertainty is the man who becomes unstoppable. For develop an unshakable purpose. A man without purpose is like a ship without a rudder, adrift, lost, and at the mercy of whatever forces pull him in different directions. Without purpose, you will find yourself constantly seeking validation from others, looking for external markers of success to give your life meaning. And when you do this, you surrender your power. You become dependent on approval, on attention, on fleeting pleasures that give you a temporary high, but leave you empty in the long run. Nice guys often fall into this trap. They think if they are kind enough, agreeable enough, and accommodating enough, they will be rewarded. But deep down, they feel frustrated, resentful, and unseen. That's because they are operating from a place of neediness rather than purpose. They are waiting for something outside themselves, a woman, a job, a social circle, to give them a sense of direction. But a man of purpose does not wait. He moves. He builds. He creates his own reality. He knows exactly what he wants, and he pursues it with relentless focus. And this makes him magnetic to women, to success, to respect. When you are locked into a purpose greater than yourself, something changes inside you. You stop chasing meaningless distractions. You stop worrying about what others think. You stop seeking permission. Your energy shifts from desperation to certainty, and certainty is one of the most powerful forces a man can possess. A man on a mission does not have time for nonsense. He does not let petty drama, insults, or minor setbacks shake him. He does not beg for attention or validation because he is too busy building something real. And that is what makes him stand out. That is what makes people take him seriously. If you do not yet have a clear purpose, find one. It does not have to be grand or perfect. It just has to be yours. What drives you? What problem do you want to solve? What legacy do you want to leave behind? If you don't know yet, start exploring. Take action. Test different paths. But do not sit still waiting for clarity to magically appear. Clarity comes from movement, from experience, from the willingness to step into the unknown. Once you find your purpose, commit to it fully. Cut out distractions. Build discipline. Stop making excuses. The world does not respect a man who drifts aimlessly. It respects the man who knows where he is going and refuses to stop until he gets there. And here's the final truth. Women do not want to be the center of your universe. They want to be part of a universe that is already in motion, already filled with passion and direction. When you have an unshakable purpose, you become a force of nature. You don't chase. You don't beg. You don't depend on anyone else to complete you. Instead, you stand firm, focused, and relentless. And when you do that, everything, including respect, admiration, and attraction, starts falling into place naturally. 5. Master your emotions. Never be controlled by them. A man who cannot control his emotions is a man who will always be controlled by others, by circumstances, and by his own weaknesses. If you let your emotions dictate your actions, you are at the mercy of the world. You become reactive, unstable, and easy to manipulate, and nothing kills respect faster than a man who is easily rattled. Nice guys struggle with this because they have been conditioned to believe that expressing every emotion they feel is the key to connection. They think that vulnerability, openness, and wearing their hearts on their sleeves will make them more likable, more attractive, more respected. But in reality, what it often makes them is weak. Not because emotions are bad, but because they have no control over them. Women lose attraction to men who crumble under pressure. Friends lose respect for men who lash out in frustration or break down over small setbacks. The world does not reward emotional instability, it punishes it. And yet, weak men continue to justify their outbursts, their mood swings, their inability to regulate themselves, blaming the world for their problems instead of mastering themselves. A man who has mastered his emotions is unshakable. He does not let anger, frustration, or sadness dictate his actions. He does not overreact when things don't go his way. He does not get defensive over criticism, nor does he let rejection or failure cripple him. He feels everything, but he is controlled by nothing. This does not mean suppressing emotions. It does not mean pretending you don't feel pain, anger, or sadness. It means processing them with discipline, responding rather than reacting, and refusing to let emotions make decisions for you. Imagine two men in the same situation. One receives an insult and immediately snaps back, letting his anger take over. He yells, argues, and loses control, looking weak and desperate in the process. The other hears the insult, acknowledges it internally, but does not react. He stays calm, composed, and full control. He either ignores it entirely, deflects it with confidence, or responds with sharp intelligence. Who do you think commands more respect? Mastering your emotions makes you powerful because most people lack this ability. The majority of men are slaves to their impulses. They let anger drive them into fights, fear hold them back from opportunities, and sadness keep them stuck in place. But the man who has control over himself, he cannot be manipulated, cannot be provoked, cannot be defeated. To develop this mastery, start practicing emotional detachment. When something triggers you, pause. Observe the emotion rather than acting on it. Ask yourself, is this reaction serving me? Is this response making me stronger? If not, let it go. Learn to channel negative emotions into something productive. Anger should fuel discipline, not outbursts. Fear should be a signal to move forward, not an excuse to hesitate. Sadness should drive reflection, not self-pity. A man who rules himself rules his world. When you have full command over your emotions, you become a force that no one, no woman, no insult, no failure can shake. And that is the essence of true power. The final truth: be strong, be kind, be unstoppable. Being a nice guy is not the problem. The problem is being only nice, without strength, without depth, without conviction. The world doesn't respect weakness wrapped in politeness. It respects power wrapped in discipline. You don't need to become a jerk. You don't need to manipulate or play games. You need to become a man who stands for something. A man who is kind because he chooses to be, not because he's afraid to be anything else. Stop waiting for permission. Stop apologizing for wanting more. Stop bending over backwards for people who wouldn't lift a finger for you. It's time to step up. It's time to become the kind of man the world has to respect. And when you do, you won't just stop losing. You'll start winning.